What made you instantly realize your friend is not a real friend back in high school? I was failing chemistry badly, and my best friend Jake offered to let me copy his homework. I was desperate, so I said yes. We'd been friends since middle school, and I trusted him completely. He knew my parents would kill me if I failed another test. They'd already grounded me for a month over my last report card. The next morning, I turned in what I thought was his work, but it was actually blank pages with just my name written on top in my own handwriting. When Ms. Rodriguez called me to her desk during class, I was confused. She held up the empty sheets and asked if this was some kind of joke. The whole class was staring at me. I could feel my face turning red. I looked over at Jake, and he was smirking like he was watching his favorite movie. That's when it hit me. He'd set me up on purpose. I got sent to the principal's office for academic dishonesty. They called my parents right there while I sat in the chair next to his desk. My mom started crying on the phone. I was suspended for 3 days and got a 0 on the assignment, which basically guaranteed I'd fail the semester. I kept texting Jake asking why he did it, but he never responded. Not once. I called him that night and he declined every call. When I came back to school, everyone was whispering about it. Kids would stop talking when I walked by. I heard someone say, "There's the cheater," when I passed their table. Apparently, Jake had been telling people I was a cheater and that he'd caught me trying to steal his homework. He completely flipped the story around, made himself the hero and me the villain. The guy who was supposedly trying to help his struggling friend. I confronted him at lunch in front of everyone. He just shrugged and said maybe I'd learn not to cheat next time. Said he was just trying to teach me a lesson about integrity. I couldn't believe it. This was the guy who'd slept over at my house hundreds of times, who knew all my secrets, who I'd defended when other kids called him weird for collecting Pokemon cards in 8th grade, who'd borrowed money from me countless times. But here's the part that really destroyed me. That afternoon, I overheard him talking to Sarah Chen, the girl I'd had a crush on for months. He was telling her how disappointed he was in me and how he'd always suspected I wasn't honest. How he'd tried to be a good friend but couldn't support that kind of behavior. How it broke his heart to see me throw away my integrity like that. Then he asked her to homecoming. She said yes without even hesitating. I realized Jake had planned this whole thing weeks in advance. He knew I was going to ask Sarah to homecoming that Friday. I'd been working up the courage for weeks and he knew it. He'd been jealous that she always seemed more interested in talking to me than him during lunch. So he destroyed my reputation and swooped in to look like the moral good guy who had standards. The worst part wasn't even the suspension or failing chemistry and having to take summer school. It was realizing that someone I'd trusted with everything had been plotting against me. That all those times he'd seemed supportive about my grades or encouraged me to talk to Sarah, he was probably just gathering ammunition to use later. Every secret I'd told him became a weapon. I never got to explain the truth to Sarah. She avoided me for the rest of high school. Jake and her dated for 2 years. I had to watch them together every day at lunch, knowing exactly how he'd manipulated the entire situation, how he'd used my desperation and trust against me, how he'd stolen not just my chance with her, but my entire reputation. Years later at our 10-year reunion, Sarah came up to me at the bar. She said she'd always wondered what really happened that day.